Hey
All right.
everybody, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting with bassist and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, Steve Fossen.
Hi.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thanks to the great wonder of Skype, we are able to chat, both of us being in Washington State, which is interesting, but again, there's some distance between us, and this technology helps make the world a little smaller. Right now, you are actively playing with Heart by Heart,
Sure.
and we want to come back to that, but let's kind of start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your bass journey. How did you get started in bass?
Well, when I was really young, my father had a guitar that he had bought for his brother, and his brother lived in North Dakota, and the guitar was here in Washington. So it sat in our house for quite a number of years before his brother came out. So I used to open up the case and look at it and touch the strings a little bit and think, wow, that's really cool. And I'd like to play one of those, but it was so big and I was so little. And then I was super fell in love with, the Everly Brothers, Roy Orbison, Elvis, Ricky Nelson, all that stuff from that era.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really inspired by that, and it really struck me, got into my heart and into my soul. And when I was younger, my parents had friends that had an organ, one of those double-keyed organs, and they would say, "Oh," and I was like, "Can I turn it on?" And I could pick out melodies when I was just a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the fourth grade, the music teacher handed me a trumpet and said, "Hey, see what you can do with this." So he sent me home over the weekend to see, if I could make any noise or whatever. And I came back on Monday or Tuesday or whatever when we got back together, and he went around the room and saying, "Well, what did you do? Let's see if you can make a noise." And then I ended up playing the Star Spangled Banner that I taught myself over the weekend. So he was impressed with that. So then, of course, I was tapped to play the Star Spangled Banner at all the school assemblies and all that kind of stuff after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I played the trumpet for a few years, and then when I got into seventh grade, the trumpet I thought it was a square instrument, for, guys, it wasn't a rock instrument. So I kind of gave it up. And when you switch schools and you go into the seventh grade, you kind of think, you get kind of cocky and you think, I got to do something cooler than trumpet. So,
Mm-hmm.
so then I just, kind of got lost in being a punk, kind of a punky guy. And then my parents, we moved from Lake Forest Park to Canmore, which is about 5 miles away. And on the very first day of eighth grade, because Roger Fisher and Steve Fossen were both Fs, so we were in the same homeroom, and we were sitting next together, and we struck up a friendship, and we both found out that we both loved the same kind of music, and we were totally inspired by all the rock music and stuff that was going on at the time. So we kept saying, "Oh God, it'd be so cool to be, make a musical group and be in a band and play concerts and write songs and do albums and all that kind of stuff." And we kept talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. And finally, 2 years later, we both, went out and got instruments. He got a guitar and I got a bass. And it was kind of interesting. My father, I had some trouble I was hitchhiking, and it was illegal back then. And so they make you go downtown and watch a film about how dangerous it is to hitchhike, which it is,
Mm-hmm.
Basically it is. So on the way home, my dad thought, well, I know you've been talking about, the bass for a while. So why don't we stop at the music store and I'll just rent you a bass and see how you like it. And so I got a Orlando bass, which is kind of a Japanese copy of kind of like a Fender, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
and a Supro amp with a 15, and it was tube. And I got it home, and they could not get that thing out of my hands for 3 months. So after that, then the next step is you take that money that you rented it with, and you can apply that to a purchase. So I purchased a bass, and the rest is, history.
There you go. There you go. So from kind of you got the bass in your hand, And did you kind of start, I know a lot of people will start just bands with friends and kind of get something going with their acquaintances locally. How did that continue to evolve?
Exactly like that. Exactly like that. I find out that somebody played guitar or somebody played drums, and so it's usually guitar players that I get together with, and I played guitar at the same time too. I had a little guitar that I played on too, but mostly the bass. And then, they would teach me their songs, and I would teach them the songs I learned. And what I would do is I'd sit in my bedroom with the radio on, and back then everyone listened to the same songs. Hit radio was hit radio all across America, and everybody, a hit song with, by Otis Redding or whatever was hit everywhere at the same time. So I would just sit there on my bed without an amp or anything and just pick out the chords and the bass parts. I'd come home from school and sit on the bed and just learn, keep playing songs until Mom said, "Shut that radio off. Get in here and eat dinner," whatever,
Yeah.
And so everybody would teach each other songs and stuff. And then I would find out that these other bass players they would be playing a song. They'd say, "Oh, this is how it goes." And I go, "No, that's not how it goes. This is how it goes." Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't believe me. And, I would just say, "Well, okay, whatever." And so I got into a few different bands, and played around. And a couple of years later is when Raj and I decided to join forces, and we were sitting in the basement of my parents' house, and we shook hands. We said, "Let's make a band." He knew a drummer, I knew a singer and guitar player, and he said, "I'll call Ray, he'll call Ray, and I'll call Don, and see if we can put a band together." And that was called the Army.
Okay.
And we were in the Army for a year, and then we changed the name to Whiteheart for a year, and then we shortened it to Heart after that.
Gotcha. And that was around, not to date you or anything, but I'm going to say kind of late 60s?
Yeah, 67, 68, 69.
Cool.
The Army, Whiteheart, Heart, 69, yeah.
And obviously, I know everybody's heard of Heart. That took off. And so how did that continue? You guys recorded... tell us a little about that for people that haven't really followed. I know I listened to all that music because we're about from the same time. So, album after all, like, oh, this is the new one and stuff. So,
well, 69 was kind of before Heart was popular, but we had a band, and we were just like everybody else in America. We were kind of in that hippie mode, and we had a 6-piece band with, conga player and a lead singer and a couple of guitar players, and we thought we were pretty hip, so, and we did record an album back then, and it was kind of progressive but I'd found out in the meantime that album somehow got lost. All the tapes got recorded over, or
oh man,
the masters were lost or disposed of, who knows. So that band was together for a couple of years, and then when that band broke up, Raj and I were kind of devastated, because we always had a band where we were making, being able to make our rent and all that kind of stuff, and we found ourselves homeless because we had no band and no income.
Oh, wow.
So we were sleeping in people's backyards, and thankfully it was summertime, so it wasn't that bad. And we had a van, and so we could sleep in the van if it was raining. And we put an ad in the paper, and this was early or kind of mid 1971. And we advertised for a lead singer and a drummer. And the lead singer that answered it was Dan Wilson. And she had a drummer friend and a guy lead singer called Gary Humphreys, and the drummer was Chris Blaine. And so we put together a band, and we decided that at the time that Heart wasn't the right name to call this band, so we called that band Hocus Pocus. And so we toured around for 6 months, and we made pretty good money. We played, of course, we played cover types material, and
sure,
And we played, actually we played the Red Caboose in Vancouver a lot, if you remember that club.
Wow. No, it's long before my time here.
Yeah. Yeah. So we played that a lot. And so Raj and I took all the money that we made and paid off all our debts. So we were free and clear and, got back on our feet financially. Mm-hmm. And at that same time, Ann had met Roger's brother, older brother Mike, and they had started a relationship. And Mike was in Canada at the time. And America was kind of enmeshed in the Vietnam War. And the economy was, all of the money was going to support the war. So the economy around here was bad. Mm-hmm. And up in Vancouver, Canada, which is where Mike was, the economy was booming. And he said, well, why don't you guys, come on up here? So we asked all the people in Hocus Pocus if they wanted to move, and they said no. And so Roger and Ann and I, we all emigrated to Canada. And when we got up there, we, started Heart again.
Gotcha.
And we got a Canadian drummer and a Canadian keyboard player, and we started playing, around the clubs in Vancouver. And, it wasn't 6 months into it, we were one of the best known bands in the Vancouver area. Because we did a lot of Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, and we did some Yes tunes and stuff like that. And we really took it seriously, because we've always trying to do our music, we've always taken it very serious, and we've always really tried really hard to do a good job on everything that we did. So we played around for a couple of years, and back then, I don't know if you remember, but when you played someplace, you'd show up at a club on a Monday or Tuesday, and you'd play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sometimes you'd play 2 weeks in a row. Wow. So doing that, we really honed our skills and our stage presence and the way we interacted with each other and everything. So by the time, which was a couple of years later, when Mike Flicker from Mushroom Records saw us, we were a fairly polished act. Gotcha. And so then, the next step was, hey, you guys want to come in and do a demo? So we went into Mushroom Records and did a demo, and one thing led to another, and they said, we're going to have you guys make an album. And we said, gee, that'd be fun. And then that was Dreamboat Annie. Okay. Yeah. So we started recording Dreamboat Annie, and oddly enough, Dreamboat Annie, when everything was said and done, we had part of the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra play on it, and we had guest musicians, and we paid everybody, studio fees and everything. The whole bill for Dreamboat Annie was less than $40,000. Wow. And so when the album was done, we thought, wow, this would be cool. I hope we sell enough records so that they'll ask us to do another one. Mm-hmm. So we started off we actually released it in 75, and then we started touring behind it in 76, like early 76. So we started off in February of 76 with selling, 5 albums, and by August of 1976 it was gold. Wow. And by October it was platinum. Very cool. Yeah. We toured all over the place during that year. We started off in March touring, we played with everybody. Doobie Brothers, Charlie Daniels, all these other, we did all these festivals and fairs and stuff, opening up for all these bands and playing, and, Richie Blackmore's Rainbow and all these bands. And it was really fun, really eye-opener. And we ended up the year opening up for Nazareth in Europe. And our first gig in Europe was in Paris. Nice. Yeah. And then my dad said, well, I think maybe you're doing all right now.
Well, I think most musical parents will hope that their musician children will find a a level of success, but until they actually see it, they're like, okay.
Yeah, when are you going to get a real job? That was my dad's line.
Gotcha.
Dad, it is a real job. I go out, I do stuff, they pay me. It's a real job.
Absolutely. Well, and I think one of the recurrent themes we keep hearing from a lot of the musicians that have been at this for quite some time is that there were certainly periods of, dry spells and sacrifice and, staying committed in spite of the fact that it didn't seem like the right thing to do at the time. I want to say either it was Rudy Sarzo or Ricky Phillips that used the phrase, they didn't have two quarters to rub together. But, so they were crashing on somebody's couch and, getting whatever gig they could, and it takes dedication and hard work. I think so many people overlook that whole phase in developing something that's successful.
I would say that most people would get to that hard work phase and they wouldn't even do it because it was so disheartening at points and hard. Like I remember the very first gig that we had in Vancouver, each member made like $15 or something like that. And that was the first money we'd seen in like 6 months.
Wow. And
I took my money and I had to go buy toothpaste and a toothbrush because I'd been out for a while.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It was scary.
And so moving along, things were picking up. Heart was obviously with a platinum record, on the charts. Now continuing recording. I know I always think of Heart as the Wilson sisters with both of them. So Ann was first, and is that Nancy?
Nancy, yeah. Well, Ann, and Roger and I, we joined forces like in 71, like I said, and we officially changed the name back to Heart in April of 72.
Gotcha.
And then we toured around, can't really call it a tour, but we were in the lower British Columbia area for, 2 years playing around. And then Nancy joined in 1974.
Gotcha.
And then shortly after is when we did the demos with Mike Flicker. And I remember once we got into the recording, Mike would say, okay, you guys, you better do this right because you're going to be listening to it for the rest of your life. And we all went, yeah, right. Yeah, sure. But it was true.
Totally.
And the big saying in the studio back then from Mike Flicker again was, he who hesitates is lunch. So, we kept you on your toes. So we knew that we had to do everything as good as we possibly could. Use the best instrument we had, get the best sound we could get, play the best part we could think of, and just let everything, just pull out all the stops and just go for it.
Got you. And the process of writing the music and developing the music, how did that go with your band?
Well, a lot of the stuff originated with, of course, Ann and Nancy. Mm-hmm. And at first, Roger had a big influence on that too. But they would bring these raw things to the studio or rehearsal or whatever. And, Mike Flicker and the rest of the band, we'd all sit around and we'd dissect the songs and everybody would put their contributions in.
Gotcha. And moving along, because I know many of us enjoyed album after album, song after song, time kind of progresses, bands change, people come, people go, in the evolution of things, kind of bringing us to current times. Now you're playing with Heart by Heart.
Yes. And Michael Drozier from the Dreamboat Annie days is the drummer in Heart by Heart also. And he played on, he didn't play on every song on Dreamboat Annie, but after that he played on every song, on every album that we were involved in. So.
Gotcha. And when did Heart by Heart get started?
That was like 5 years ago.
Okay.
And Summer Masick, our lead singer, she just her and I were friends, and we would hang out, and all of a sudden our friendship turned into more than that, and we became a couple. And
Okay.
we were so cranked to play that in the morning when she'd be getting ready for work, I'd be playing the bass, and I'd break into like maybe Crazy on You or something like that, and then she would start singing along. And so people heard about us doing that, and then all of a sudden we were playing like dinner parties, and we played at a bistro, and we even did a wedding as a duo, just a bass and vocal duo. And then that was the first time I played Heart songs in years and years and years, because after I just got out of playing music, basically, and especially Heart music, because I just didn't see the point of it. And but with her singing and she reignited my love for the Heart material.
Gotcha.
And then we got a call from a friend in Anchorage, Alaska, who was putting together a concert with Dwight Yoakam as a headliner. And he called up me and said, "Hey, do you guys want to come up and open up for Dwight?" We said, "Well, yeah." And then we got to thinking about it. We said, "Well, gee, a duo, bass and vocal duo before Dwight would be kind of, lackluster." So we said, "Why don't we see if we can get some musicians?" So we called up Mike, and he said, "Yeah, that'd be fun." And then we called up Randy, and Randy said, "Yeah." So we got together and we made a 45-minute set, which is what they wanted for the opening act.
Mm-hmm. So
we got it all together, and a week before the gig, we got a call from him. He said, "Well, Dwight pulled out of the gig." And we went, "Oh, that's a bummer." But then we went, "Well, but it's fun playing this music." So we kept rehearsing, and other people started hearing about it through friends and channels and stuff. And a good friend of ours put on a benefit for the Susan G. Komen breast cancer awareness. And Heart by Heart, that was our first gig. We played the benefit, and we raised over $6,000 for this particular benefit. And at that benefit, there was other friends, and they told other people, and pretty soon a couple of agents around town heard about it, and then they started asking us to do shows around town. And one of our first shows was playing at JBLM, which is the military base here south of Tacoma, and we played there on the 4th of July. And we actually opened up for Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Very cool. And now with the band, I know you guys have some tour dates in Arizona, and I was looking at the calendar. I think you've got some Washington dates already starting to show up next year.
Yeah. I can't even keep track of it all because, well, I do a lot of the, foundation work, and, somebody says, "Oh, can you play here?" And I send it out to Summer and Lizzie, and they go, "Oh, well, yeah, it'll work." And then they get, so I don't even know everything that's going on right now. Gotcha. But I know that we're playing a casino in Kingston. I think it's the 1st and 2nd of December, and then the 3rd we're playing Touchdown City for the Seahawk Philadelphia game.
Oh, cool. And probably the best place to look, if I'm not mistaken, would be heartbyheart.com for your tour dates and schedule and all that.
Yeah. And we have a good presence on Facebook also, Heart by Heart.
Heart by Heart. Okay.
Yeah.
And I would be remiss. I know everybody that plays bass always wants to know a little bit about gear. What are you using? What gives you your voice?
Oh, well, I've always had a Fender bass. Mm-hmm. I've always loved the sound of Fender, and back in, I don't know how this happened, but back in '68, a good friend of ours, Ray Hartman, he said, "Hey, there's a cool 1968 bass or 1959 precision bass for sale down at this music store downtown," and it used to be from the bass. I can't remember his name right now, but he was in the Frantics.
Okay,
you remember the Frantics? Anyway, they had a song that was semi-popular on the radio, and I went down and I made a deal with the guy, and it was a $50 down payment and $25 a month, and my mom had to sign for the loan. And it was so it ended up being like $225 for a 59 precision bass.
Wow.
So that was the bass that I used on Dreamboat Annie, and I've had it all these years, and I still have it. Yeah.
Now, with a precious bass like that, is that what you tour with as well, or do you leave that in a safe place and take?
Well, that particular precision bass, no, I do not take out, but I do have vintage P basses that are similar that I do take out,
Gotcha.
And I have vintage jazz basses that I take out also. And I've always been into tube amps. So back in the early days, I had Fender dual Showman amps.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 400 PS came out, which was a gigantic 350 watt, tube amp. But I also had a Showman that I played the 400 PS would go through the 15s, and then the Showman would go through the 12s, and so I could have that crunchy top end with the gigantic low end. And back in those days, the sound reinforcement at clubs the bass wasn't really considered, so you had to fill up the room with the bass gear that was on stage. So that's why we needed a van.
Sure.
The bass gear. And then, so I've always been a tube guy, and back then I was a Fender guy. And then I think it was around 1998, 99, right in that range. A friend of mine said, "Hey, have you ever tried an Ampeg?" And I said, "Well, they're so heavy. I can't even lift that." And he said, "Just try it and see what you think." So I tried it out, and it was like a light bulb went off in my head. The preamp and the power and everything. There's no other amp on the market that blends the lows, the mids, and the highs into one, solid tone. A lot of the amps that are popular, and they sound fine, but the bass and the mids and the highs to me seem like they're on different planes, and they don't make a real solid together tone anyway. So
Gotcha.
I use an Ampeg SVT, and I have an Ampeg. It's a 210 AV, which is it's like 1/4 of a SVT cabinet, sealed cabinet, and I use a 300 watt tube head to drive it, and that's what I use on stage, and it sounds beautiful. I love it.
And I would guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, with the sound of the time, it wasn't necessarily a pedal effect kind of sound. Are you going just straight into the amp with your instrument? It's the voice of your bass?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always gone straight in.
Yeah.
It's a bass, a chord, an amp, and a speaker box, and that's what I do.
Gotcha. And it's my preference as well, although admittedly I'm seeing especially a lot of the young players that they're kind of pushing the envelope, finding new ways to develop sounds and things, and adding in a MIDI processor into the bass and doing all kinds of things. And I really enjoy the essence, the foundation of the bass, the cable, and the amp.
Yeah, I found out really early on that if you put a pedal in between your chord and your amp, not only did it add noise, it took the signal and lowered it a little bit.
Gotcha.
I mean, that might not be true with pedals nowadays, but back in the day, that's what happened. And I don't know. There's just something about the purity of doing everything direct.
Sure. And
it
has to fit the music too. And I think because of the time frame and the music that you're playing, it's the sound that you have. I mean, back in the day, my first amp, I had one of these. It was a Sears amp, and it had faulty wiring, so that when you turned it on with the toggle switch, it would shock you. So we learned you turn it on with your tennis shoe. So put your Converse on and turn on the amp, and it had as an effect a tremolo. And so you got a little vibrato with it, and it was a stomp pedal, so it was an on and off kind of thing. And that was as fancy as it was going to get. That,
yeah.
That was it.
Yep. And the way I get my different tones is like I'll play up closer to the neck for a bigger, fatter tone, and then everywhere in between gives you a little bit different tone with the string, and then I'll palm it too, and mute the string down by the bridge. And I mean, there's all these different tones you can get just from doing that.
Sure. Well, many people say it's in your hands. It's what you're doing there.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool. And looking ahead, I know we talked. There's a little touring. What plans do you guys have? Heart by Heart. What's in the future?
Well, we're always learning new songs, new Heart songs. We want to do as much of the catalog as we can do. Mm-hmm. We can't play every song every night because there's Summer can only sing for so long per night, and then
sure,
because I mean, Anne it was and still is one of the greatest singers on the planet, and when Summer does a great job singing Heart songs, but it is vocal gymnastics for her, and it can tend to wear out her voice if she doesn't be careful.
Sure.
But anyway, but we do, we play all the standard hits that everybody expects. Mm-hmm. And then I think this coming year we want to add, like we're talking about maybe doing the Dreamboat, or not Dreamboat, but Dog and Butterfly album, start to finish, which would be, it'd be a big challenge, but it'd be really cool to do. And, I think I just got this thought just the last couple of days that the way the world is now, and the political scene, and all the stuff that's going on, I think I'd like to do songs that bring out a little mellower essence in, like maybe it's slower songs, prettier songs.
Sure.
And try to calm the seas out there a little bit.
A little soothing.
Yeah, soothe the seas. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we could all use a little soothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's frightening.
Oh,
things are frightening right now.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, Steve, we appreciate you sharing with us, your journey, this information. I know we talk about often, is one of the reasons that we have such a commitment to music, is that in addition to being a universal language, because people all over the world listen to music and can get it. They don't even have to understand the language, but the impact that it has on people's daily demeanor, listening to music and feeling happy. And I know, especially with tunes that go back in the day for folks that were there like you and I, that it always brings like, where was I when I heard this, or who was I going out with when I heard this? It's a soundtrack to our life. And so these things are therapeutic, and they are very necessary. And without them, I think that people can spiral into a kind of a hopeless frenzy. And so it has great importance and value. It's not fluff entertainment. This is an important thing for us human beings to have. So we do shows, and people will come up to us after the show. Like we always go out to the lobby or with the merch table or whatever. Mm-hmm. We'll sign autographs. Mike and I will sign the old albums and photographs and posters, whatever people want to bring. But we've had people come up to us with tears in their eyes and say, "Thank you for bringing back the memories." Yeah.
That's what Heart by Heart's all about.
Very cool. Well, man, again, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much, people. You've seen it here. Steve Fossen, Heart by Heart. Check out what they've got going on at heartbyheart.com, or look them up on Facebook, and I will make sure I add those links in. Thanks again, man. You've seen it here. Bass Musician Magazine.